You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hi, Leslie, you're on with Combat Radio. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic. You're on with Mark Ryan, who is Bumblebee in the Transformer films, music producer Tommy Dietrich and Jennifer Chadwick. Nice to talk to you. We are huge fans of your work, and this is a real privilege for us.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to actually, before we get started on what's current, we all know that you're pushing a pretty dynamic new film that I actually saw for the first time this week, but we've had a lot of documentary directors that we respect come through our doors with their product, and there's been some special stuff. Matt Turnauer was in with Valentino the Last Emperor, which we loved. Stacy Peralta was in with Dogtown and Z-Boys, and that's something we love. But your work, you have not just the one documentary movie that is respectable. You've got the complete resume of great documentaries year in and year out that are just outstanding. The Pixar Story is one of the best documentaries I've seen, and we'll get to what you're doing now in a minute, but I got to tell you, just looking at your work, the history of your work, it's pretty staggering in terms of how impressive it is.
Oh, thank you. That just made my day.
Well, you know, we're full of compliments for those who deserve it. We're going to kick some villains under the bus later in the show, but where you're concerned, no such luck. And I also wanted to tell, we were talking a little bit at the music break about how you were actually the granddaughter of Iwerks, the visionary who is credited in many circles as being the guy who got Disney to where it is today.
That's correct.
Are we allowed to talk about that at all, or is that very hush-hush?
Oh, no, not at all. Are you kidding? Talk about it all you want.
Well, you did a great documentary on him. It's called The Hand Behind the Mouse, which I would encourage everyone to see. Frantically go get that or pick that up or watch that. But it's amazing what a genius Iwerks was and what his contributions really were to getting Disney ramped up to the giant it's become. And I wonder, at times, you know, because had gone on to other things, he wanted to pursue some other things in life aside from working under Disney. I wonder if, and he ultimately went back to Disney, were the relationships between him and Walt always good, or you seem to have a good relationship with Disney. Disney seems to respect you quite a lot. Is that just as a filmmaker, or is that because of your history with as Ub's granddaughter there?
Well, I think it has to do with a lot of things, but I mean, my first film was that project, and Roy Disney was my mentor and champion of that project, and it really told me a lot about the company and their respect for him and what he obviously did for the company as the designer Mickey and also as the one-third partner in the original Disney company. I think, as you see in the movie, the issue was that, Walt started taking a lot of the credit and becoming micromanaging and really just, for lack of a better word, upset Ub, and he was like, look, if you got it handled, Mickey was hardly profitable at that point, so he was still in the red in many ways, and Ub, at that point had been with Walt for 10 years already, and every single venture they did, they were in debt, and Ub took huge financial hits as a result. So unfortunately, when he left to form his own company, it was after that Mickey became very famous, and that it was kind of too late at that point. But so they did go through their separate ways at the time when they split. But then when they returned in 1940, when Ub returned, it was like nothing had ever happened, and Walt was thrilled because Ub became the top guy at the studio for technical and projection systems and camera systems and optical printers and early special effects and everything. So he basically took that company from a film point of view to a whole new level. So as the film talks about, their mutual respect had always been there, and Ub was certainly not the only person to leave. He was one of the last people to hang on after they lost Oswald the Rabbit, and people tried to steal Ub away, but he wouldn't leave. So I think there was a lot of trust and mutual respect even then, regardless of the fact that he left in 1930.
Well, one of the things that you're great about doing in your work is you capture really the emotions of the people involved. I mean, it's almost like these documentaries are living works of art because you go back in time, but you capture the moment so effectively. And in that particular documentary, one of the things that really came across was that these guys, when they were pioneering the conditions were far from pleasant in their sweat boxes. They were trying to basically not just do cartoons, but innovate a new art form, right? So these guys were like working in impoverished conditions, and it's really kind of like one of those situations where Ub came across as bulletproof for a long time, and people were making like the Pat Powers, conspiracy, or these other different distributors who wanted to steal the work away or become primary profiteers on the backs of these artists. And it did look to me like Ub was a major contributor, and finally got to the point where it's like, look, my family's actually going to starve at one point, it seemed like. It's like the emotions were really captured well in that documentary, I thought.
Yeah, well, it helps to have a lot of photos, too, that you can go back to. And, I mean, obviously when you're trying to use a documentary to recreate a scenario that was way in the past, you've got to use all the tools in the toolbox, from music to editing to still photos to interviews, and really capturing the emotion of the people that can talk about it the best,
Right.
So, and that project obviously was, my first passion project. I mean, I always said I'm not sure I'll do another project that I'm as invested in as that one, just because it was family.
Well, you can definitely feel the passion for the work in the work itself when you watch it. And you said that Roy was sort of a mentor, and I was wondering how you two actually met and how that partnership started to develop.
Well, my father and Roy were friends, and so my father wrote him a letter and said, that I've been working on this idea and something I really want to do, and would they support it? So Roy's original meeting with me was, well, yeah, we'll support it. Go out and raise the money and come back to me, and we'll see if we can just approve the licenses,
Right.
And you can get it on a fair rate. But then, it took me 1 week, and I went out and I raised $750,000 actually already in 1 week, and it was a matter of the right people at the right time saw the potential of that project and said, "Sure, are you kidding? If Disney is supportive of that, we'll fund it to the amount you want." And so I went back to Roy and I said I got the money, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. So then he says, "Okay, well, I didn't think it would be that quick and that simple. So maybe we ought to be looking at this stuff differently." And so he went to talk to Michael Eisner, and they said, "Okay, we should own it. We should own it outright and put up the money for it." And and it went from there. But Roy, the whole time, was just. He was like family to me, and always very supportive, and he's somebody that I really will always cherish in my life.
I have two questions for you based on what you just said. Number one, if you were able to raise that kind of money so quickly, can I borrow your Rolodex for a couple hours? And the next thing is you mentioned Michael Eisner, who was not really known as a champion of the creative side of Disney Studios. He's no longer in charge there, as we know Iger is. But did you find working with him in any level, was that a good experience, or was it difficult? Because you're coming at them not with something that they can probably really. I'm sure they see the creative merit of it, but they are such a profit and loss driven company that they'd look at this and be like, "Oh, Leslie Iwerks, fantastic. This is going to be the next thing." I mean, do they know the path you were going to take as a director, and they have some idea of what you were capable of, or were they very difficult to deal with?
No, they weren't difficult at all. I mean, I really went through Roy. I mean, I never really went through Eisner. I mean, Roy and Eisner dealt with each other on it, but I interviewed Michael. No, I didn't interview Michael on this, actually. I interviewed him for the Pixar story, but no, that wasn't an issue. It was, we did a 60-minute cut, and then we went, and because that's what they wanted at first. You're like, you're a first-time director, and we'll give you enough money to do a 60-minute version, which was not what I wanted to do, but I knew that I needed to, at least agree to that and get something made. So
Right.
Once we got the 60-minute done, they liked it so much, they said, "All right, you were right the first time. We'll give you the same, an equal amount of money that we just gave you to add 30 more minutes and to qualify for an Oscar."
Mm-hmm.
So that was amazing, because I was finally able to really get in there and do what I really wanted to do. With certain clips that were pricier and music and that kind of thing. So anyway, so another 6 months later, we finished the 90-minute version, and that's what came out.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.